Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, one of the co-founders and co-chairs of Denver Startup Week. We've come a long way in I was going to say a short period of time, but no, it's been a rather long period of time. Denver Startup Week has been around, and we continue to grow and impact the community every year. How many of you here have participated in Denver Startup Week for more than 5 years? Got a few. You've seen it grow. You've seen the changes. I want to thank you all for being here. We've got a great presentation coming up about Kickstart, one of our Denver Startup Week headline sponsors. You're going to hear from Dalton Wright, the general partner. They've got some really cool stuff happening. Dalton's recently moved here 2 months in. So if you got all good advice, tips for Denver, send him his way. But he has a great initiative underway, a new pre-seed initiative that he's going to talk about. And I think it's just another way to highlight and bring attention to our region and our communities. So we're looking forward to hearing about that. Remember, during Denver Startup Week, it's by the community, for the future of the community. So throughout the week, please be sure to take the time to give back. Your expertise, your relationships, and your experiences, it all makes a difference. With that, I'm going to welcome Dalton to the stage and to Colorado.
Thank you.
I'm going to add one more thing while you're here. I say that he's here like that they just appeared, but the truth is they've been actually working in Colorado since 2008. So now we're just putting a bigger stake in the ground. Here you go, Dalton.
Thank you. All right, I guess I'll just take a seat here. I don't see the monitors, so hopefully I'll be able to track. In fact, maybe I'll step up here just to keep an eye on it. So thank you for attending the session. It's really good to be here. So I'm Dalton Wright. I'm a general partner at Kickstart Fund, which has been an active fund in the state of Utah for many years. And as was mentioned, I've been investing in Colorado for 14 years or so. And we've really been ramping up our investment practice in recent years, and recently moved my family to Denver. So very excited to be here. Oh, if I go back here, so I am going to be presenting, this is kind of a teaser for this. It's not even a pre-seed program, it's pre-seed. This is really for first-time founders who have never raised venture capital before. When we invest in a region, we want to make a long-term commitment. So this isn't the type of program that you would do if you intended to be in Colorado for a fund cycle. This is something that we really want to invest into over decades. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about this. But that's really the focus of the presentation today is the 14 Founders Initiative. But my hope for this presentation is just to help you know who we are, kind of introduce Kickstart and myself, and we'll get into the program here. So Kickstart's the most active VC in Utah. We started it back in 2008 when nobody really cared about seed stage in Utah. At the time when we were out raising money, people said, okay, move to the Bay Area and then we'll talk. Who wants to be a seed stage fund focused only on a state like Utah? What are you going to invest in? Is there enough to drive fund returns out there? And so we've been, entrepreneurs trying to figure out how to be venture capitalists in an ecosystem like Utah. And we're proud to report that we've had success raising subsequent funds after those early days. We've raised almost $500 million to date, and we're investing out of Fund 6, which is a $175 million fund. We write checks anywhere as small as $500K up to $4 million, and we're generalists. And so, we're not focused specifically on AI or Web3 or B2B SaaS, although we do all of those things. If you look in our portfolio, you'll see a lot of great B2B SaaS companies. That's kind of been our bread and butter. We've done marketplace investments. We've done clean technology investments, ed tech investments, fintech investments. We're generalists, so we're looking for scalable businesses, technology companies that we can identify early before it's obvious to everybody else that this is going to be an amazing company and help get them ready to raise their Series A. So on this, actually when I was talking to Jordan, and appreciate Jordan being flexible, on this presentation with me in the back, but he asked, did you mean to cut the country off like that? I said, yeah, I'm trying to, I must have pushed the kill button there. But when I was doing this, I wanted to just kind of shrink that map down. This is CB Insights, and they publish every year kind of the state of venture capital, the state of the nation. And you can see some notable firms on there. We're happy to have our logo on Utah. But I didn't want to cut matchstick off here. That's actually why I left it the way that I did, is because one of the most supportive groups that I've found here in Denver has been Matchstick. They immediately opened up their database to help us see the other investors. So I wanted to make sure that they're on this map as well, because they've done incredible things here in this state. So I love old maps. I love this old map of showing Utah and Colorado. Kind of the borders are a little blurry. Denver barely makes it onto that map when this was made. I actually spent my elementary years right on the border of Utah and Colorado in a little town called Vernal. It was a mining town. By Dinosaur, so when I moved out here, drove through Dinosaur and showed my kids where we used to live. But we're focused on these mountain states. This is our geography. We started out in Utah, we've expanded to Colorado. So I moved here to open the Kickstart office in Colorado. We've been very active in New Mexico, Arizona, but really, it's these mountain states that we love. And what we are all about is seeding the next generation of entrepreneurs. So, I like kind of this visual of the kind of grayed out map there that's kind of nondescript, and then the vibrancy of these plants that are growing. I think if you want to have the old oak trees, if you want to have a vibrant ecosystem, you have to be willing to invest in the seed stage. That's difficult, right? When you're trying to pick companies to invest in before founders are proven, right? What are you basing your investment decision on when you've got a founder that's to pitch you an idea? They don't even have a product built yet a lot of the time. They've never been an entrepreneur before. Like, how do you have the conviction to invest in an entrepreneur like that? But if investors aren't willing to take that step at the early stage, they don't become the Series A and Series B and the growers, the growth stage companies. And so I think we have to stick our necks out and do things that are atypical and show some courage in how we invest, because there's not a formula that I can punch this into or an algorithm that I can rely on to help me choose investments. So moved out to Denver. This is my family. This is the U-Haul. We actually threw our stuff in, traveling light. And just to share a little bit about myself, so my wife, Ide, I met her down in Mexico. I moved to Mexico in 2009, right after helping create Kickstart Fund 1. I moved down to Monterrey, Mexico, northern Mexico, and helped raise the first early stage tech fund in the country. It's called Alta Ventures. And while I was there, I met Ide and fell in love. Came back to the States, we did long distance, and eventually got married. And when she came to the States, she started going through the immigration process. She didn't speak English, I speak Spanish, and so we were able to communicate clearly, but she struggled really to figure out how to actually get through this process. Lawyers wanted to charge her a lot. So Ide created a company called Simple Citizen, which is software that automates the immigration paperwork to make it easy for people to go through that process without having to hire attorneys and spend a lot of their hard-earned money just to go through the paperwork. So she took her company through YC, and while she was doing that, Aram was born, our oldest. So he's 7, Mateo's 4. Actually, he just turned 5, excuse me. And second grade and kindergarten. And they're going to the Denver public schools. So, they're having a good experience. We just barely got them enrolled. And, things are going well. So we love being here from the experience that we've had so far. So I'm still finding my bearings. I'm trying to figure out, okay, when I think about an ecosystem, what comprises an ecosystem? You talk about the angel investors and the funds that are there. You talk about the universities. You talk about the entrepreneurs, of course. You talk about the state programs and grants. There are a lot of things going on that I don't even know anything about yet. That's why I appreciate these sessions. I'm learning a lot. I appreciate all of you being willing to share your knowledge with me, because I'm just barely getting up to speed on what's going on in Denver. Even though we've been investing here for a while as a local, I don't know if I can, if you'll allow me to call myself a local just yet. But being on the ground here in Denver, I'm trying to, expand my awareness so I can contribute back to what you already have going on. So one of the things is I've been exploring what's unique about Colorado. There's a lot of parallels between Utah and Colorado that I love. I mean, you talk about a young population that's very entrepreneurial. You talk about these mountains, the skiing, the quality of life that we have, the productive capacity of our industry. There are a lot of things that actually, we would look at and say, that's my cousin there across the border. But one of the things that really stands out about Colorado is just the scope of these mountains, right? Obviously. And so I started looking into these 14ers. In Utah, the highest peak. So Ida and I went and summited the Kings Peak a couple years ago. It's 13,500 foot elevation. That's the highest spot in Utah. Denver has depending on who you ask, how you calculate it, somewhere between 53 and 58 peaks that are over 14,000 feet high. So you probably all know about all this, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that this is the state that has more 14ers than any other state in the nation. Alaska has 29 or something. Washington has a couple. California has a few. But nobody beats Colorado in terms of the number of 14ers they have. So I was just kind of fascinated by that. I like the mountains, really love the mountains. But I also thought there's something powerful about this metaphor, the imagery of the mountain. And so I started spending some more time thinking about what can we do as a fund to create more awareness about what's going on in Colorado and to really contribute back to something, create brand and contribute to something that will continue to endure. And I really love the metaphor of the mountain. If you look through history, the mountains always had this kind of spiritual connotation to it. You talk about the place where gods and humans meet, where the gods dwell on Mount Olympus. You talk about Moses going up into the mountain. The Bible's full of references to going up into the mountain to commune with deity, to receive wisdom and clarity of mind. I imagine that some of you have probably, gone up to these 14ers have probably felt like you got a little clarity in doing that, in that journey. I actually, as I was reading more about kind of the metaphor of the mountain, I watched Martin Luther King's final speech that he gave. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this, but it's called "I've Been to the Mountaintop." And it was the day before he was assassinated, and he's talking about how he fears no man. He fears no threat because he's already been to the mountaintop. He's already seen the promised land. It's incredible, just kind of a coincidence of history to have such a mighty person almost anticipating their own death, talking about how they're not afraid of it because they've already been to the mountaintop. So I really love that. I love that imagery. So there's a lot of parallels in so many mountains, you could say. I'm going to draw some parallels here. Summiting these peaks and creating a company, especially if you want to do a first ascent. You actually don't have a map to go down. You have other routes that you've seen people do, but for your first ascent, it's first to you. It starts with a single step. You're not going to be able to anticipate all the problems that you're going to face along the way, right? You're going to have to be flexible as you respond to unforeseen challenges, inclement weather, failing equipment. Maybe a member of the team doesn't want to go all the way, right? But one of the things that really stands out to me about starting a company and trying to scale it up is how lonely it can be at the top, right? Nobody can walk those steps for you. And so for those of you who've done any of these challenges, you know that sometimes you just want to hand it off. Just somebody else, please. But it's like, I have to do this. Nobody can walk me up that mountain. And as the CEO or founder of a business, you can't take that burden off and hand it over to your second in command. It doesn't work that way. You're the founder. You're the entrepreneur. Only you can walk that path. And it's lonely. It's difficult. It's trying. But the view from the top is incredible, right? And once you reach the top, that was your goal. So it's finite, right? Even if you would want to keep it going, you can't. So when I came to Denver, and when I go to any startup ecosystem, I like to ask the question, so tell me about who's on your Mount Rushmore? Who has created the ecosystem here? Whose lives made the difference in what we all can enjoy now? A foundation that we can build on, a culture that's been built. Who established the culture here? What is the culture of Denver's startup ecosystem? I have first impressions, but it's really in how we live. It's, what do you think the culture is? And who deserves to be recognized as a pioneer or a founder of this culture and this ecosystem? And that's a hard question to answer, right? It's subjective. But I started, I wanted to learn more about the ecosystem, and I started using ChatGPT. I said, tell me who belongs on, I want to identify the top 100 contributors to Denver's startup ecosystem. And it started asking me questions back. Well, it's a difficult task. Here's what we need to know. And I started providing parameters. I said, well, I want to, objective outcomes, like who created a big business that actually sold for a lot of money, created jobs, created wealth. Who's been most active living here, contributing back to the ecosystem, investing as an angel. Well, you have success. What Brad Feld has said that, the ecosystem needs to be founder-led, entrepreneur-led, and people who put down deep roots. So who are those people here? Who had the big exit that decided to invest and write checks into the next generation of founders here, as opposed to just, retiring to Hawaii. So who actually deserves to have their face placed on the Mount Rushmore of Colorado Tech. And I don't know the answer to that yet. I mean, I created my own list using ChatGPT. I don't know if it's good or not. I think you would have a better sense for me than I would. But that's one of the things that I'm trying to accomplish is I have found that, if I go back to Utah, there's this genealogy, and people in Utah are big into genealogy. You can actually, if you ask a founder, tell me about who belongs on Mount Rushmore, they'll start talking about Ryan Smith and Josh James, Larry Miller, and you can talk about where their junctions happened in their careers. Oh, before they started this, they were doing that with so-and-so. And I found that as I asked this question here in Colorado, I'm trying to get some consensus around, tell me who belongs here. And so that's one of the things I'm here for, is I'm asking for your help in identifying who belongs on Colorado's Mount Rushmore. And so if you don't mind, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this. Let's just take a quick minute. I want to know who you think, if you can scan this, who give me a name. And if this isn't working, please pull out your phones. Okay, Brad Feld. Let's just do it that way. Instead of doing the poll, let's just shout some names, who belongs here? John Elway. Got Brad Feld and John Elway. Brian Leach. Anybody else come to mind? John Hickenlooper. Okay. So I don't know these stories. I know who John Elway is. I know who Brad Feld is. Have an introduction to Mr. Leach. But I want to help this ecosystem tell those stories for my own benefit and for all of us to understand who created this ecosystem and what values did they embody? What lessons can we draw from their experience to help us be better entrepreneurs, help us contribute more effectively to this ecosystem and know where we came from, where you came from. I'm a visitor. I'm an immigrant. So this is what I'm proposing. This is really just an idea at this point. This isn't set in stone, but I welcome your feedback that I'm calling this the 14 Founders. And I'm going to use ChatGPT to assist me in curating some of this, but I'm going to identify who are the 14 founders that put their faces on these 14ers, right? Up on the mountaintops, the people who made the difference. I want to understand who they are, and I want to help tell their stories. And I want to go bag some of these peaks. So I'm going to go get 14 of these over the next couple years, and I'm going to record every step of the way, and I'm going to tell the stories of the 14 founders who built this ecosystem as part of this. And at the top of every peak, I'm going to announce a new founder that we're going to invest $144,000 into, and $400. That's the height of Mount Elbert. So times 10. $10 per foot of elevation, right? And I'm going to follow these 14 founders. I'm going to create a web series that tells the story of the founders who built this ecosystem. We're going to get the footage of us summiting these peaks, and then we're going to announce and tell the stories of the next generation of founders that we're hoping to back with this program. And this is for first-time founders who have never raised money before, who in some ways have no business raising money, and we're going to do everything we can to help them be successful. So, and maybe some of these founders will go on to actually, make a case for themselves to be, an icon in this ecosystem. And I know this seems like a small check, right? Most of the checks that we write, the minimum we write is a $500,000 check. Most of the time we're writing $2 million checks. But I went to my partners, I said, I want to take one of our core seed bullets, a couple $1 million, and I want to invest that over these 14 founders. And some of this is informed by this experience I had creating a student-run venture fund called Campus Founders Fund. So a few years ago, I started this fund. I said, hey, I'm going to give, I want to give some of our capital to students to invest in fellow students. And our LPs heard that idea, and they said, that sounds risky, Dalton, unproven founders, unproven venture capitalists, this feels like a recipe for lost money. And you're just kind of abdicating your fiduciary responsibility. So it took a lot of work to get my LPs comfortable with this idea. But we did it. We set up a fund and we let students make the decisions. One of those companies was a Brazilian immigrant going to college in Utah, started a company called Pura that's doing over $100 million in revenue now. When the students first found it, he was just a student, right? And so I believe in finding founders before it's obvious. I believe in it. I've experienced it. And so my hope is that through the support of you and the collective, we can identify, this isn't my story to tell. This is Colorado's story that I'm going to help tell. But I'm looking for support in identifying the 14 founders that are going to go on and make an impact in the state. So that's kind of the idea. My dream really, so I'm going to create these 14, kind of call it a web series, but I'm hoping that over the 5 to 10 year arc of these stories, these are really early founders we're going to be backing. As we mentor, as we provide support, we're going to be recording kind of key junctures in their journey, right? And I'm hoping to turn this into a documentary, something that tells the story of these 14 founders, the next 14 founders. And my hope is that, we can inspire more people to start companies, right? I love entrepreneurship. I think that this is the most powerful force we have for good in the world. Like, my optimism comes from the entrepreneurs of this world. And I want the next generation to look to these people and say, that's hard. Success is not guaranteed, but if you can make it, you can have a huge impact on your community, on your own life. You can change the trajectory of your own life with the success, multiple generations, and you can contribute to those who are going to build the next level of company in the state as well. So that's my hope. That's what, kind of call it my declaration here in front of all of you. I'm not particularly gifted public speaker, but I'm actually nervous about going and doing this, right? Like, this is a lot of work to put $2 million to work. We're used to writing a check and that's it, and join the board. This is going to require some real effort from a lot of us to make this happen, but I think it's going to be a really cool program when it's actually said and done. So if you want to stay in touch on this topic, you can just grab that QR code and just give me your email address. I'll send you information as we make progress. Still working out what the terms of this investment will look like. Still working out the first few 14ers that we're going to go get. There's a lot to be done still. This is, as I said up front, kind of a half-baked thing that I'm throwing out there into the universe, and I'm going to believe it's going to happen. So that's what I've got, and I definitely didn't take a full hour, so I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Go ahead.
That the best VCs and investors have a 2.5% chance of their investment turning into an interesting outcome. So is really any VC proven when you're talking about almost similar percentages to gambling? Like, what, I think a lot of times founders get really discouraged when a VC or investor says no to them. Yeah. They think they know and don't know what's good and what's not. But the hidden secret investors know is that they have no clue what's going to be an interesting outcome for them. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Sure. I feel like as I do this job more and more, and I've been doing venture for 15 years now. I think I'm getting better at ruling out stuff that's just not going to work, but I don't know if I'm getting better at picking outliers, right? And that's the name of the game in venture. So at Kickstart, we talk about dragons as opposed to unicorns. Unicorns, privately valued company over $1 billion. What we're hunting for are dragons, and for us, a dragon is a fund returner. And so one single company, and in any portfolio, we'll have maybe 40 to 45 companies in the portfolio. It consistently is the case that there will be one or two companies that make drive all the returns, 80% of all your returns. And so it's not like a consistent hit rate game where you're trying to do like 2 or 3x consistently. You're trying to find the one that's going to do 1,000x or 500x, 100x, right? You're looking for that real outlier. And by definition, outliers are not predictable, right? And so I have a healthy respect for the uncertainty of what we do. That's why you want to make a lot of bets. I also think in the example that you referenced here, when the students presented me the idea for Pura, I didn't like it. And I voted it. It wasn't my vote. That was a core design principle of Campus Founders Fund, is that the VCs were not going to vote. The students vote, and we write the check. And so in this case, I'm like, I don't like consumer hardware. You're telling me there's some sort of a data play on an aroma device here. There were all these things I didn't like, and the students did it anyway. And, now look what's happened to this company. I was wrong. I was clearly wrong. And so, not to self-deprecate or anything like that, I definitely agree with what you're saying, is that there's a lot of uncertainty in this. And so you need to choose the right people that you want to be on a journey with. You need to eliminate the stuff that's not going to work. Don't waste your time. Don't spend 10 years on something that even if it's successful, you only got to the first camp on your, as you're trying to get to the summit, right? There are some companies that you could never go past first camp one. And so you want to choose the right trajectory and the right routes that you're going to take and the right founders you're going to bet on. And beyond that, it's going to be pretty uncertain. Yeah. And so in this case, I want to involve the crowd in selecting these 14 founders, right? I believe that the wisdom of the crowd can drive investment returns because I've experienced it. Go ahead.
So two funding-related questions. One for the prize for the 14 founders. Have you decided how you want that money to be spent? Is that salary? Is that to fund other things? Or any decisions there yet?
Most of these companies won't have a product built yet. Some of them will. Most of them won't. And so primarily, it's so these founders can actually quit their job and go try to pursue their dream. That's really what it's for. And you tell me how you want to spend it. I'll give you advice, but I'm not going to put stipulations on what the founders do with the money. What I'm looking for are outlier talented people who otherwise wouldn't have a shot because they have to keep working that job, or they don't believe that they can do it, and they need somebody to say, I believe in you, and I'm going to provide mentorship and guidance on kind of pitfalls that I've seen, but I'm going to do everything I can to help them have full autonomy in building their company.
Thank you. And then the follow-up question is, does receipt of the founder money affect how you would look at that company for seed funding?
It's a great question. So it's one of the risks that whenever we do these like early programs, our business is finding seed stage companies that are ready to take a couple $1 million. That's what I'm doing most of my time, other than supporting the businesses in our portfolio, or when we're raising money, spending time raising money. I'm trying to find seed stage companies that are ready to scale. And so this represents, out of a $175 million fund, we're going to put a couple $1 million into this. Hopefully it results in, the dream story here would be, of those 14 founders, one or two of them ended up building the next iconic company here in Colorado, and we led the seed round. That's the home run for my investors. We're like, okay, I understand why you did that. Why you spent all that time climbing those mountains and, doing this thing for a $2 million investment. Okay, makes sense. This is how you identified one of the early outliers. But the challenge with, kind of multi-stage investing and it's kind of strange to say multi-stage when you're talking about pre-seed, seed. But there's a negative signal if we don't invest, right? And so I need to set expectations. If Sequoia leads your seed round and then they choose not to do your Series A, it can be very damaging to you as a startup founder. It's like all the other VCs tend to be herd animals. It's like, well, if Sequoia knows you better than anybody and they're not leading your round, why would I be smart for stepping up and being your lead investor right now? And so that's one of the things that I have to manage with this is establishing appropriate expectations that, hey, we're not going to follow on every single one of these companies. We're not going to seed every one of these companies. You have to prove it on your own merits that it's either going to be Kickstart or it's going to be the next great investor who's going to lead your seed round because you earned it, not because you got into a program that has multiple rounds of funding built in for it. So that's one of the kind of challenges I think of a program like this is I don't want to create a negative signal if I'm not writing the seed round check. And at the same time, the truth is that I'm hoping to identify something here that I can write that seed round check into. Go ahead.
I'm Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Thank you. And my question was, if you were to put yourself in the co-founder or the founder's seat, and you're going into this seed round of funding, how do you look at like the right number to go ask for? Because if you ask for too high of a number, eliminate the conversation right away.
Yeah.
And then as a finance person, I can build you a $500,000 plan, and I could also build you a $5 million plan. But thinking about labor expenses, development expenses, how should I think about it going forward?
I mean, some of it depends on what you can actually put to work effectively, right? So I prefer that type of a budgeting plan where it's not just like, oh, a round needs to be this size, and so that's what I'm asking for. I'd like to see actually, what can I fund you to your next inflection point? I'm not providing capital for 5 years of runway. I'm providing capital for typically 2 years of runway. And so what do you need to actually, when there's just the burn across those 2 years, but what do we really need to prove to ourselves as a company in order to have a significantly de-risked and more attractive, more valuable business to go out and get the next round of funding done? And so that's really what I'm focusing on is what milestones are we funding to, and help me understand the case that you're presenting to get us to that milestone. And it can be product market fit. It can be $1 million in ARR. For most of the time, what we're looking for is we're trying to get to, $1 to $2 million in ARR, so that then it's, fairly easy Series A fundraise. But it's, kind of case specific. If you're a, biotech company or a medical device, it's a very different kind of capital requirements than, say, an AI company right now, or a B2B SaaS business. So it kind of depends on the business. But, for me, looking for that, 2 years of runway, and what's the inflection point that we're going to hit over that time?
My name is Chebet, and maybe this is what happens in Denver. I'm not sure, but I get the feeling that you actually care about all these entrepreneurs, and you want to see basically complete strangers succeed. I don't understand why you're doing it.
Well, anytime a VC tells you that they don't care about money, they're lying. And so I definitely care about making money for myself and my investors. So let's just get that out on the table. Like, I am not trying to present myself as an altruist entirely. So I have to drive returns, otherwise I don't get to stay in the game. And so I need to keep doing this. And part of this initiative is to help me build relationships, invest into this community, co-invest with more investors, find the next great entrepreneur. So this is completely aligned with my mission as an investor. But there's also the other side to it, which I appreciate you seeing that, because I feel that, which is this is my life passion, right? Is that when I was a college student, I started my first company. And the reason why I did it was because, one, I wanted to make money. I always want to, I never want to deny motivations, because I get sick of it when people lie about their motivations. I wanted to do something, notable. I wanted to matter in this world, right? I wanted my life to count for something. And so there was that, but it was also this realization. So I first learned about venture capital in 2003 or so. I don't come from a family of business people or anything like that. I've always liked the underdog story, and I love the story of people who can, in a short amount of time, change the world. I know that's super cliche to say, but if we rewind just a couple of generations, there was no concept of I'm going to go build a scalable company that's going to achieve billions of dollars in valuation, and it's going to cure disease. It's going to connect more people globally. It's going to lift people up out of poverty. It wasn't really realistic. You're as a professional, you're trying to go get a job with a company, get that pension, and at age 65, look back and say, look, this is my life work. Look, that's the body of work. That's what I dedicated my life to. And on the tail, the backside of the dot-com collapse, there were still these echoes of this possibility that in 10 years, you could actually change the world somehow, you as a founder. And I've only become more convinced by that. If we're gonna lift our species, it's gonna be the founders. It's not gonna be bureaucrats. It's not going to be, name the other vocation that you go into. And I'm not trying to denigrate anything. I'm just saying, if you wanna have scalable impact, you have to align the capital, and you have to align the distribution with the demand, and that's where problems really get solved. And so for me, the reason why I care about the entrepreneurs is because I, in a sense, worship entrepreneurs, if to maybe not be too dramatic about it, but entrepreneurs are my heroes. The founders that I get to work with, they're the people who are putting it all on the line. They're the ones who are trying to summit the mountain. I'm the guy back on headquarters, trying to give advice, and hey, you need some more money, or can we give you some support? But the entrepreneurs are the ones who are out there actually taking each step, doing that grind for the love of what they're trying to accomplish. And so for me, if there's anything that you're picking up on why I do this, is because I actually believe it's the best hope for our future as a species. I know that's super dramatic, but I don't see anywhere else where I could be spending my time trying to affect change and see positive outcomes outside of entrepreneurship. And for me, I love venture capital because it's the scalable entrepreneurship. It's, you can change your life or your family by having the food truck, and that's noble work as well. But if you really want to actually kind of change trajectories, it has to be scalable. And I don't know anything else that does it the way that, venture-backed startups can. Yep.
outside of the, this 14 program, do you normally invest in, previous founders who are successful? And if so, is that like 80%? How does Kickstart kind of think about, $2 million checks when it comes to, first-time founders and stuff like that?
Yeah. So most of our checks are in founders that we've never backed before. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have round trip, multiple successful outcomes. One of them that we're, super excited about right now that's, anyway, I won't get into details, but this is the second time founder that we backed. And that's one of the ultimate compliments to us as fund managers, when a founder comes back and says, that was a good experience, let's roll again. And so certainly when a founder that we already have experience with is coming back to us, pitching us on the next idea, whether the previous startup was a success or failure, it impacts it a little bit, but we're okay backing a founder that previously failed if they failed with dignity and honor, the way that they actually did it. And they took a big swing, right? That's what we want to see. So yeah, absolutely, we invest in repeat founders when it makes sense, but it's not the mode, the standard mode for Kickstart. Kickstart is all about finding the next founder that nobody knows. And maybe they've toiled in obscurity, for a while. Maybe they have a startup that's been bumping along for a while. Maybe they just got done shutting down their last business, and now they're thinking about their next thing. So, we're just early. We go early as anybody. Yep. Mm-hmm. Hi. Sure. Boy, where do I want to go with that? I mean, there are a lot. I have stories of companies that were sued into oblivion that I stayed on the board of, that rebounded, that have hundreds of millions of revenue. So I've helped navigate companies through shutdowns. Disco is an example of a company that I recapped the business because they couldn't raise any money. It's an old cap table, but I still believed in that founder. And even on the other side of that, doing a lot of painful cleanup work on that company to get it positioned so it can raise money again. We still were within days of going out of business. So we approved a $50,000 shutdown investment. We're lead investors, and so it's not like we just invest and then we can kind of, when it doesn't work out, we kind of scurry away. We're on the board and we're going to see this thing through. And so we approved $50,000 to help this company have an orderly shutdown. Around that time, the founder said, hey, we've got a renewal that's coming up right now with one of our key customers. Is it unethical for us to take that, to renew them, knowing that we're shutting this down? So we went back and forth and really deliberated on this, and we decided it's not over till it's over. Let's renew them. And we started to the belly of the plane was scraping on the tarmac, and we started to turn it around. And, the company was acquired during the pandemic for, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the founder now is retired and investing back into other startups in Utah. So this is just an example of, to answer your question, there are a lot of different things. There are companies that tend to sometimes just do this, and it's like a dream, that they're just going and going. Most of the companies we work with struggle. Most founders have periods where they're not even sure this thing's going to work out. Even the ones that go on to be successful, and you see the announcement of the acquisition, the celebration. There's stories in every single one of those companies where founder was divorced, relationship, failed because of the stress of being in the startup, to having to let 80% of your employees go because you're running out of money. Most startups are brutal stories, right? And so the value that we bring is being a trusted companion that's seen this story before. We don't overreact. We do everything we can to help you be successful. So, but we have 200 portfolio companies we've invested in, over the past 14 years, and so I've got a lot of stories. Some of them heartbreaking, some of them triumphant, but I have deep respect for entrepreneurs because I know how hard this is. Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of neglecting this side of the room.
So I've been doing a ton of, I'm going into a pretty structured program, and there's a ton of co-founder speed dating happening in my life right now, and it's been kind of agonizing, 20, 30 plus calls, and brilliant people on product feedback, but it's just I can't seem to find my soulmate. Yeah. And so I'm kind of at the point where I'm wondering, should I just say to the VCs, I'm going to go this solo and everybody's going to be an employee And I'm curious what you tell founders in that position who are like, I've been looking, they get it, they like the product, I think we can get to fit, but I just didn't want to do this alone. Like, do you have a heuristic for people in those shoes who like, they just can't seem to find somebody else to really champion the mission at the same level? Yeah,
I mean, I think most VCs will tell you the same thing, which is it's better to have a co-founder. You know, it's less risky. You know, there's the vicissitudes of startups are so intense that to have a companion that you really trust, that you're kind of yoked together, can make a big difference. At the same time, there's so many examples of solo founders that have gone and built amazing companies without a co-founder. And so really what I would be paying attention to if it was a solo founder is what's the evidence in their past that they're capable of operating like this, that they're resilient as a solo founder, because it feels riskier if you're a founder that doesn't yet have that track record to demonstrate your ability to do those hard things alone. We're going to wonder, okay, what happens when the going gets tough here?
Effect, if the primary way to sort of bring in that track record looks like bringing an adult in the room, but to me that kind of feels like what the VC is supposed to be there for. So I'm like, why would I introduce somebody who's going to help out with fundraising onto as a big piece of the cap table when I should just lean on my lead for that?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I thought where you were going with that is, hey, you just said that you guys go earlier than anybody, right? Like, and you're telling me that I need to have a track record now? There's a lot of different ways to point to your track record, right? You know, it doesn't have to be that you created a venture-backed startup before, but it's like, what evidence do you have that you're exceptional, right? As far as like what the VCs are bringing to the table, I'm not gonna like sugarcoat, like we can't do that much to help our companies. We write checks, we offer advice, but we're not transformative. And any VC who tells you otherwise is just selling you. Like the VC is not gonna be the one that like is your co-pilot. You know, if you need a co-pilot, you need a real co-pilot. Go ahead. I think I can see it.
No, I was just going to say that, like, I've had people who say, like, oh, I want to be the Eric Schmidt to your Larry Page, Sergey Brin type of thing. And I was like, but they had a really big company before they made that move.
Yeah.
I was like, that seems premature if you're pre-seed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
I mean, I feel like one of the strongest indicators of the quality of a founder is their ability to marshal resources and compel people to follow them on a vision, right? Like, can you get people to quit their high-paying jobs to go join you in this low-paying, non-sexy, obscure startup that nobody gives a rip about? And can you get them to do that? And so it doesn't have to be a founder, but what I would be looking for, interacting with you is, can you actually get the world-class talent to go with you on this journey? And sure, it gets easy once you've got a big company. You can go hire, Mr. So-and-so or whatever. But
Is there a discount rate, like they will come in 60 cents on the dollar that you can bring into a seed conversation and say, like, I've got the talent lined up, but they need to be able to pay their mortgages?
Sure, part of this is so that entrepreneurs can go afford to take that risk, but most investors won't want to invest until you've already like crossed the Rubicon, right? That's why this, 14 founders idea is risky, right? Because we're saying we're going to help people cross the Rubicon here and go start the thing, where most investors say, come back once you've quit your job, because I'm not going to fund like moonlighting on the side, like we're going all in if we're going to do this. So, yeah. Go ahead.
I feel you, buddy. I feel you. But I did find some success with Y Combinator. They have a co-founder matching service, and I went through their startup school last summer and found it wasn't just conventional wisdom, it was a lot of battle test wisdom. I didn't get into their cohort, and part of it was they really like a co-founder, right? But I did find, but I was doing it like almost like a Zen exercise every week, sending out 15 invites, interviewed a bunch of amazing people. They've got an incredible network. Had about 40 matches, about 30 conversations, about half a dozen saying, yeah, I'm interested, I might really do this. And then at the end, a couple people said, no, I'm in. And I had to choose between those. And my co-founder also brought a graphic designer. He's a programmer. We've been working together for 8 months. So it is possible. But I also had to reflect on my first company where I didn't have any co-founders and everyone was a hired gun. And especially with programmers, I found that when they thought they were done, then you had to give them a big pile more money to actually get it done. Yeah. And they weren't really in it with you, right? Yeah. The small stock options you might throw at them So that co-founder energy is very tough to find. It took me 6 months and hundreds of invites, but that's at least one resource that worked out for me. And it does change. We've been building the product now for 9 months, and it feels like I don't actually need that startup money. I can walk from here. And that is very empowering for us as a startup.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, as an entrepreneur, I wouldn't build a business that's just a fundable business, right? Like start with the problem, start with your customer, start with your market, focus on those things. So a lot of times we find entrepreneurs that are kind of saying, well, what do I have to look like in order to raise money? And I almost feel like it's the wrong question. It's like, hey, what type of business are you trying to build? Not what type of business, does a VC want to see? And I think also, similar to, say, like this is a crash comparison, but, co-founders or even raising money, I think it's been said that most venture and founder relationships last longer than the average marriage in the United States. And so, you're really like going to be in business together for a long time. And so I think you're better off with no co-founder than a bad co-founder.
I agree, yeah.
And so build your business, hire the people that you need. You're the founder, you're the entrepreneur. If you find that co-founder that, you make magic with, great, that's even better. But I think if you're trying to fill a seat in co-founder, you're better off having that person be a hired gun, as you put it.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. If anyone else is looking, I had success there.
Thank you.
And it does feel different, definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dalton, thank you.
Sure.
How and when can we apply?
So I'm going to open the application up at the start of the year. And we're going to do 7 this summer and 7 next summer. And so that's kind of how I'm, haven't done a 14er yet, I've got to lose a bunch of weight and I've got to, I have to be able to go do this, right? And so what my intention is to identify this first cohort, 7 founders of the 14 from the new year to the summer. And then I'll be doing the content and doing these things, but and I welcome the feedback, because I don't want this to be like ableist or anything like that. But I would love for that cohort of 7 to get together one weekend next summer, and let's go do one together, right? So that's what I'm thinking. What else? Yeah, go ahead. When am I going to do the first one? As soon as the season will permit, in kind of early summer. Yeah. And I don't know, some of you have probably, what's that? Midsummer? Yeah. And you need the snow to recede a little bit, and I'm not that hardcore that I'm not kind of using crampons or anything like that, but maybe towards the end of this. I don't know where this will go. I just think it's fun, who knows, maybe at some point, where there are multiple cohorts of the 14ers, and we've done a bunch of these, and including the hardest, ones, but I'm a beginner. Rory?
Or are you looking for technology as a service or hardware as a service, med tech?
We're generalists, so all of it. If you look in our portfolio, you'll see SaaS businesses, AI businesses, Web3 companies. You'll see therapeutics. We've got a shoe company, a sock company. Puro that I mentioned is an aroma company. So it's one of the things I actually love about what we do is I'm able to see a lot of different things. Generally, the name of the game, I shouldn't say the name of the game, but what drives valuation in most companies, you can boil it down to growth rates and gross margins. And so we tend to gravitate towards companies that have high gross margins and potential for extremely high growth rates. And some companies don't lend themselves to that very well. So I won't say we'd invest in anything, of course. We're investing in companies that can scale rapidly, but that can have a different complexion, depending on the type of business. But primarily, we do a lot of B2B SaaS and marketplaces. Some of the notable companies here in Colorado that we've backed have been marketplace businesses. So Sondermind is a mental health marketplace. Havenly is a marketplace for interior design, and others. So, that's been our most active category, but it doesn't mean that it's exclusive. Go ahead.
Hi, Dalton. Thank you. One of the questions that investors will often ask founders is, what do you know about your space that nobody else knows?
Yeah.
And since you go so early, what is it that you think you know about identifying the right founder that others might not know?
I've never been asked that question before. I like that. What do I think I know? It's so easy to just like default to conventional wisdom, right? Listen to the same pods, same blogs. We've been saying the same thing to each other, these conferences over all these years. I may have to actually think about that one. I don't know to actually give you something that, most other seed investors would say, I don't know. I'd probably end up, repeating something fairly cliche, but I would say from my experience, I guess, and this is, falls under conventional wisdom, but if you want to have the outlier returns, you have to be willing to take shots that are completely not obvious, right? And that's, we all know this, but you can do that in different ways. For us, we're ecosystem investors and builders. We're geographic. When people say, well, how can you still survive as a generalist seed fund in this world where you're trying to compete against an AI specialized fund for that amazing seed deal? It's because we invest in the roots of the ecosystem, right? So I guess that's one thing is that, it's like, have you ever seen like the video of like the little chicks that, get out, you crack outside their egg, and the first thing that they see is like the thing they think is mom or dad or whatever, that they'll follow the dog, when you, and I don't use this analogy in any way to try to like diminish the founders who are just getting started with their first startup and saying, oh, you're a helpless duckling or anything like that. But what we've experienced is that when you believe in somebody, before any, most people are used to being told no over and over and over again. And if you're the one who says, yeah, I believe in you, let's do this, they will be incredibly loyal, helping you achieve your objectives as an investor as well, letting you write multiple checks when the company's doing this. Once a company's doing this, you're fighting to get money in the company. And the entrepreneur is the one saying, I'm trying to figure out my allocation. Who am I going to let in right now? And so for us, like part of our recipe of success is just being willing to go super early, be loyal to founders, don't be transactional in how we think about the decisions that we make, take the long view on the decisions, try to build a brand that's going to outlive us, we hope. Venture may transform dramatically. I don't even know what funds look like in 10, 20 years. But our hope is that we build something that can continue to replenish this entrepreneurial energy for multiple generations. And you have to be willing to it's easy to analyze a P&L once a company's scaled up and try to make some sort of a, evaluation at that point. But to make that call when somebody's just, dropping out of college, if you do that successfully, you have allies for life, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got 5 minutes here. Sure. See, where was I on this? Maybe I can go back. I don't know. He's asking for the QR code. Oh, to actually nominate people? Okay, because this was just a straw poll just for fun. I am actually going to be sending out like a form, and I'm going to get one of the local auditors to help me. I want this to be transparent. I don't want it to be like, oh, Kickstart picked their 14 favorite people that they had met. I want it to actually be something that objectively we can look at and say, that looks like the list of the 14 people who belong on the peaks right here. And I had no idea that they went through those trials, early starting that company. I want to help tell those stories. But in terms of the selection, I want it to be as objective as you can make something like this. And so you'll be seeing more of this and invited to contribute back to that. Anything else? Thank you for your questions. Oh, we've got one more. Simple Citizen. Sure. All right, thank you for your participation. I'll see you around.